The dining room changed in small ways before anyone fully understood what had happened. Conversations lowered into whispers. Chairs scraped softly across the hardwood floor. The sharp confidence that usually filled the Hawthorne grill was replaced by uncertainty, the kind that money could not immediately solve. Jonathan Reeves did not move. He stood exactly where Emily had told him to stand, his eyes fixed on the thin trail of smoke that had now completely stopped. The alarm from the device had already faded into silence, leaving behind nothing but the echo of what almost could have happened. Emily reached the hostess stand and calmly picked up a small fire blanket, the kind most guests never noticed hanging behind polished wood. She walked back with steady steps, not rushing, not hesitating. She placed it gently over the bag, sealing it with careful hands like someone following a checklist she had memorized long ago. No panique, no dramatic gestures, just quiet competence. The manager hurried over, his voice tight with worry. "Emily, should we call 911? She nodded once. "Yes," and asked everyone within about 20 feet to step outside for fresh air, just to be safe. Her tone remained respectful, never commanding, yet people listened. That was the strange thing Jonathan noticed. She never raised her voice, but people moved when she spoke. Within minutes, the dining room began to clear. A few guests thanked her as they passed. Others simply stared, trying to understand how the quiet waitress had become the calm center of the entire situation. Jonathan stayed behind. He watched her the way investors watched unpredictable markets. Carefully, looking for patterns, looking for truth. "You handled that like a professional," he finally said. Emily adjusted a misplaced fork on a nearby table, as if restoring order mattered. "I handled it like someone who pays attention," she replied. Jonathan studied her more closely now. There was nothing flashy about her. No expensive jewelry. No designer heels. Just practical black shoes and a simple silver necklace that looked more meaningful than valuable. "That was not luck," he said. "You knew something." Emily did not answer right away. She glanced toward the covered bag, then toward the front windows where flashing emergency lights now reflected faintly against the glass. "There are always signs," she said. "Most people just never learn which ones matter." Jonathan folded his arms. "And you?" It, for the first time, a small pause. Not hesitation. Memory. "I used to train for situations where noticing small things kept people safe," she said. "Different life. Different plans. Security?" he guessed. She gave a small smile that did not fully answer the question. Something like that. Outside, a cool Massachusetts breeze pushed through the open doors, carrying the distant sound of traffic and a reminder that the rest of the world had continued as usual. Jonathan looked at her differently now. Not as staff, not as background, as someone with a story. "You could probably be doing something much more profitable than this," he said. Emily picked up a water glass someone had left behind and carried it toward the service station. "Profit is not always measured in dollars," she said quietly. Jonathan almost smiled at that. Almost. "Still," he said, "most people would have walked away and said nothing." Emily stopped for just a second before continuing. "Most people," she said, "are not used to being the only person who sees the problem coming." Jonathan watched her disappear briefly into the kitchen, then return as if nothing extraordinary had happened. And for the first time in many years, Jonathan Reeves felt something unfamiliar. Not control, not certainty, respect. The emergency vehicles arrived quietly, their flashing lights painting red and blue reflections across the tall windows of the restaurant. But inside, the tension had already begun to settle into something else. Curiosity, the kind that follows when people realize someone ordinary just did something extraordinary. Emily returned to her section without waiting for praise. She refilled a glass of iced tea. She straightened a chair. She moved with the same calm rhythm she had before, as if the last 10 minutes had simply been another part of the job. Jonathan noticed that more than anything else. No performance, no need for recognition, just quiet professionalism. Two uniformed responders stepped inside and spoke with the manager near the entrance. One of them glanced toward the covered bag and nodded with approval. "Who secured it?" he asked. The manager pointed toward Emily. The responder looked surprised. The manager nodded again. She saw the warning signs before anyone else did. The responder walked over. Ma'am, that was exactly the right call. Overheated battery pack, most likely. Could have filled the room with toxic smoke if nobody noticed. Emily gave a polite nod. I'm glad it did not. Where did you learn to spot something like that? He asked. Emily hesitated just long enough to suggest the answer was complicated. Training, she said simply. The responder smiled. Well, you probably saved a lot of people from a very bad afternoon. She did not respond to that. She just nodded again and returned to placing clean napkins on table 14. Jonathan watched the entire exchange. Most people would have stepped into that moment. Claimed it. Used it. She stepped away from it. That told him more than anything else. He approached slowly, not wanting to interrupt whatever quiet system she seemed to follow. You did not even ask what could have happened, he said. Emily looked up. I already knew enough, she replied. You are not curious? He asked. She gave a small, thoughtful expression. Curiosity is useful before danger. Afterward, discipline matters more. Jonathan let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. You definitely did not learn that in a restaurant. Emily allowed herself the smallest hint of humor. No, I learned it where mistakes cost more than bad reviews. That answer stayed with him. Outside, the responders finished their assessment. One of them gave Emily a final nod of respect before leaving. No ceremony, just professional acknowledgement. Jonathan slid his phone into his pocket. For the first time all day, he had stopped checking it every few minutes. Do you ever think about going back? He asked. Emily paused, just for a second. Going back where? Wherever taught you to stay that calm. She considered the question. Sometimes life changes the mission, she said. Sometimes responsibility looks different than you expected. Jonathan understood responsibility, or at least he thought he did. Deadlines, payroll, investors. But the way she said it suggested something heavier, something personal. You miss it? He asked. Emily looked toward the front window, where afternoon sunlight now replaced the flashing lights. I miss who I was when I thought my plans would stay the same, she said quietly. That answer stayed in the air longer than either of them expected. Jonathan nodded slowly. Well, he said, for what it is worth, today you were exactly who you trained to be. Emily picked up her order pad again. No, she said softly. Today I was just someone who refused to ignore what everyone else ignored. Jonathan watched her walk back toward another table, blending back into the rhythm of the restaurant. And he realized something that surprised him. Power was loud. Titles were loud. Money was loud. But real capability often sounded like nothing at all. The restaurant slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but something invisible had shifted in the air. People spoke a little softer. Staff moved a little more carefully. And every now and then, someone glanced toward Emily as if trying to understand how someone they had barely noticed an hour ago had become the quiet center of the day. Jonathan remained at his table even after his meeting had technically ended. His business partners had already left, offering distracted handshakes and promises to reconnect later. But his attention was no longer on contracts or numbers. It was on patterns, and Emily Carter did not fit any pattern he understood. He watched as she carried 2 plates, weighing at least 10 pounds combined without effort, balancing them with the same control she had shown earlier. Efficiency, awareness, precision, skills that did not come from serving steak and salmon. When she passed his table again, he spoke. Emily. She stopped, not surprised he remembered her name. She seemed like someone who expected people to remember details once they finally paid attention. Yes, Mr. Reeves. Her tone remained professional, but there was something else now. Not distance. Boundaries. Jonathan respected that. Sit for a moment, he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. She glanced toward the dining room. I'm still on shift. Jonathan nodded. Then I will stand. That caught her off guard. Not because of the gesture, because of the respect behind it. He stood beside the table instead, lowering his voice. You assessed a risk in less than 10 seconds. You controlled a situation without authority. You earned trust without asking for it. That is leadership. Emily said nothing. He continued. People spend years in executive programs trying to learn what you did naturally today. Emily finally answered. Nothing about that was natural. Jonathan raised an eyebrow slightly. No. She shook her head once. Training teaches you what to do. Experience teaches you why it matters. Jonathan considered that carefully. And what taught you that? Emily picked up a water pitcher and refilled a nearby glass before answering, as if movement helped her think. Losing things you thought were permanent, she said quietly. Jonathan did not ask what she meant. Some answers announced that they were not ready to be explained. Instead, he asked something else. Do they know? He nodded toward the kitchen. Do your co-workers know who they are working with? Emily gave the smallest smile. They know I show up on time and do my job. That is not what I asked. She met his eyes directly. Calm, unafraid. Who I was does not pay my rent now. That answer landed heavier than she probably intended. Jonathan understood reinvention. He had built his empire on it, but starting over without resources was a different kind of strength. You ever consider going back? He asked again. This time her answer came faster. Every day. Then why not? Emily looked toward the window again. Outside, the late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the sidewalk. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do, she said, is stay where someone needs you. Jonathan did not respond right away. He noticed the silver necklace again. This time he saw the small medical symbol engraved into it. Subtle, personal, important. Someone at home? He asked gently. Emily did not confirm it directly. She did not need to. Everyone has a reason. They choose stability over ambition, she said. Jonathan nodded slowly. For the first time that day, he was not thinking like a billionaire. He was thinking like a man trying to understand another human being. And the more he learned, the more one thought became clear. Some people did not step away from greatness because they lacked ability. Some stepped away because someone else needed their strength more. The dinner rush began to build as the late afternoon faded into early evening, and the Hawthorne grill slowly filled again with the familiar soundtrack of polished glassware, quiet laughter, and the low hum of conversations about promotions, investments, and weekend plans. To most people, the earlier incident had already become a story to tell later, something unusual but finished. To Jonathan Reeves, it felt unfinished. He had built his career on recognizing rare talent before anyone else did, and everything about Emily Carter suggested rarity. Not loud talent, not obvious talent, the dangerous kind, the kind that did not announce itself. He watched as she helped an elderly man adjust his chair by exactly 3 inches so his cane could rest safely against the table. He watched her notice a child about to spill a full glass of lemonade and calmly slide a napkin into place before a single drop hit the table. Small saves, constant awareness, pattern recognition. This was not coincidence. This was conditioning. When her section finally quieted for a moment, Jonathan stepped closer again. You notice everything, he said. Emily did not look up from aligning salt and pepper shakers. I notice what matters, she corrected gently. Jonathan placed a business card on the table between them. Heavy stock, simple lettering, Reeves Strategic Technologies. His direct number embossed in dark gray. People like you do not belong in places where your best skill is remembering salad dressings, he said. Emily glanced at the card but did not touch it. Belonging is a complicated word, she replied. Jonathan did not push the card closer. He simply left it where it was. Come work for me, he said. Risk assessment, executive protection strategy, crisis forecasting. I could probably triple whatever you make here before bonuses. Emily finally picked up the card, not with excitement, with evaluation, like evidence. You are offering based on one afternoon, she said. Jonathan shook his head. I am offering based on 30 years of learning how to recognize people who do not panic when everyone else does. Emily turned the card over once, then set it back down. I appreciate the offer. The words were sincere, but final. Jonathan noticed. But, he asked. Emily folded a clean napkin with careful precision before answering. But stability matters more to me right now than advancement. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. Because of the person who needs you, he said. Emily did not confirm it. She did not deny it. Instead, she said, some responsibilities do not fit into a resume. That answer told him enough. Jonathan nodded slowly. Then at least keep the card, he said, in case stability changes. Emily hesitated this time, just briefly. Then she placed the card into the small pocket of her apron. Not as acceptance, as possibility. Jonathan noticed that too. You know, he said, most people would have said yes before I even finished the offer. Emily allowed herself a small smile. Most people did not spend years learning that the right decision and the fast decision are rarely the same. Jonathan actually laughed softly. At that, you are very hard to recruit. Emily picked up her order pad again. I'm not trying to be recruited. She paused, then added quietly, I'm trying to be responsible. Jonathan nodded once more. No argument, no persuasión, just understanding. As he prepared to leave, he realized something unexpected. For the first time in years, he was not impressed by ambition. He was impressed by restraint. And as he walked toward the exit, one thought stayed with him longer than any business deal ever had. True strength was not always the ability to rise. Sometimes it was the choice to stay. The evening crowd eventually thinned, and by 8:30 the golden light inside Hawthorne Grill softened into the quieter rhythm that came after the rush, when only a few late diners remained and the staff could finally breathe between orders. Emily moved through her closing routine with the same quiet discipline she showed in everything else. She checked receipts, counted tips, wiped down her section with careful attention, never rushing even though her shift had already stretched past 9 hours. Jonathan Reeves had already left, but his presence lingered in the small rectangular weight of the business card in her apron pocket. She had not looked at it again, not because she was not tempted, because she knew exactly what it represented. Change. And change was dangerous when someone depended on you. When her side work was finished, she finally stepped into the employee locker room, a narrow space with beige walls and a humming fluorescent light that flickered every few seconds. She removed her apron and placed it carefully into her locker. From another pocket, she pulled out her phone. 2 missed calls, 1 voicemail. The contact name simply read Mom. Emily listened immediately. A soft, tired voice filled her ear. Hi, sweetheart. Just wanted to let you know physical therapy went well today. Do not worry. I remember the exercises. Call me when you're off work. Emily closed her eyes for just a moment. Not sadness. Focus. Then she called back. Hey, Mom, she said softly. Her voice sounded younger when she spoke like this. Did you eat dinner? A gentle laugh came through the speaker. You always ask that first. Because it matters, Emily answered. They talked for 3 minutes. About medication schedules. About insurance paperwork. About whether the apartment elevator was working again. Ordinary conversations that carried extraordinary weight. When the call ended, Emily sat quietly for a moment on the small wooden bench. From inside her wallet, she pulled out a folded photograph worn at the edges. A younger version of herself stood in a structured uniform beside a training field, shoulders straight, eyes determined. A different life, a different direction. On the back, someone had written in black ink, "Proud of you, kid." She traced the words once with her thumb before placing the photo back. Then she noticed the business card again. Reeves Strategic Technologies. Direct line. Opportunity. She studied it longer this time. Not dreaming. Calculating. Could she work different hours? Could she afford better care for her mother? Could she become who she trained to be again without abandoning who needed her now? These are not simple questions. Outside, a bus passed on the street, its headlights sliding across the locker room wall like a moving timeline. Time did not stop. Choices did not wait forever. Emily finally placed the card back in her wallet, not hidden, not displayed, just present. As she stepped outside into the cool Boston night air, she pulled her light jacket tighter against the 60-degree breeze and began the familiar walk toward the subway station 3 blocks away. Same route, same responsibility waiting at home. But tonight, one small thing was different. For the first time in a long time, the future did not feel closed. And as she walked under the streetlights, one quiet thought stayed with her. Sometimes life does not ask whether you are capable of more. Sometimes it only asks what you are willing to sacrifice to protect what matters most. The subway ride home was quiet, the kind of quiet that only existed after a long day, when everyone inside the train carried invisible stories they were too tired to explain. Emily stood near the door, one hand lightly gripping the cold metal pole as the train moved beneath the city. Across from her, a man in a construction jacket slept with his head tilted forward. A college student highlighted notes under the harsh white lights. A nurse still in blue scrubs stared at her phone without really seeing it. Ordinary people, carrying extraordinary responsibilities. Emily understood that kind of exhaustion. When her stop came, she walked the familiar 3 blocks to her apartment building. A modest brick complex that had seen better decades, but still held quiet dignity. The hallway smelled faintly of laundry detergent and old carpet. She climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator. 3rd floor, apartment 3B. She unlocked the door softly. "I'm home," she called gently. From the small living room, a warm lamp glowed beside a worn couch. Her mother looked up from a blanket, her smile immediate despite the visible fatigue in her eyes. "You are late," her mother said softly. Emily knelt beside her before answering. "Busy night." She checked the medication organizer on the coffee table. "Evening dose already taken. Water glass half full." "Good." Physical therapy was not too difficult, Emily asked. Her mother shook her head. "I'm getting stronger." Slowly, but stronger. Emily smiled at that. Small progress mattered. She moved to the kitchen, reheated a simple dinner she had prepared the night before, and returned with a plate. "You should be resting," her mother said. Emily shook her head gently. "I rest when things are stable." Her mother studied her carefully. "Something happened today." Emily paused, not because she wanted to hide it, because she did not want it to sound important. Just noticed something before it became a problem at work. Her mother gave a knowing smile. "You always did." Emily sat quietly beside her. After a moment, her mother noticed the business card sitting partially visible in Emily's wallet as she reached for a napkin. "What is that?" she asked. Emily hesitated. Then she handed it over. Her mother read it slowly. "This looks important." Emily shrugged slightly. "It is an offer. Nothing decided." Her mother looked at her with the kind of clarity only parents carried. "You gave up so much already." Emily answered without hesitation. "I did not give up anything. You chose differently." Her mother reached for her hand. "You were meant for big things." Emily squeezed her hand gently. "Taking care of you is a big thing." Silence followed. Not heavy, just honest. After a while, her mother said something Emily did not expect. "You should at least talk to him." Emily looked surprised. "What?" Her mother smiled softly. "Because strength is not just sacrifice. Sometimes strength is allowing life to open another door." Later that night, after her mother had fallen asleep, Emily sat at the small kitchen table with only the overhead light on. She placed the business card in front of her again. Opportunity, responsibility, fear, hope, all resting in a rectangle no bigger than 3 inches. She turned it over once more. Then she made a quiet decision. Not yes, not no, just a step. She picked up her phone and saved the number without calling. Because sometimes courage did not begin with a leap. Sometimes it began with simply refusing to close the door. Morning arrived quietly through the thin curtains of Emily's apartment. The pale Boston sunlight stretching across the small kitchen table where the business card still rested beside her phone. She had fallen asleep there for an hour sometime before dawn, not from indecision, but from exhaustion. Responsibility did not pause just because opportunity arrived. At 6:30, she was already awake again, moving through the same routine she had followed for almost 2 years. Coffee first, medication schedule second, encouragement always. Her mother was already awake, trying to button a cardigan with slow, careful movements. Emily noticed immediately and stepped in without making it obvious she was helping. "You're getting faster," Emily said. Her mother smiled. "Only because you make me practice." Emily poured oatmeal into a bowl and added sliced bananas exactly the way her mother liked. Small details mattered. Always. "Did you sleep?" her mother asked. Emily nodded. "Enough." That was not entirely true, but it was close enough. After breakfast, she helped her mother through the morning exercises the physical therapist had recommended. 10 repetitions. Careful breathing. Encouragement after every small success. Progress measured in inches instead of miles. At 8:15, Emily checked the time. and reached for her bag. "I have a shorter shift today," she said. "I will be back before dinner." Her mother studied her again. "You're going to call him." It was not a question. Emily paused at the door. "Maybe." Her mother nodded with quiet approval. "Good. Just information. That is how strong people decide things." On the subway ride downtown, Emily finally opened her phone and looked at the saved contact. Jonathan Reeves. No title, just a name. She stared at it for several stops. Not afraid, just careful. When she finally pressed call, she did it the same way she did everything else. Calm, prepared. The phone rang twice. Then a steady voice answered. Reeves. Direct. Focused. Emily almost smiled at the efficiency. "This is Emily Carter," she said. A brief pause, then recognition. "I was hoping you might call." She ignored the warmth in his tone and stayed professional. "I'm not calling to accept anything. I am calling to understand what you are offering." Jonathan's answer came immediately. "That is exactly why I wanted you to call." She listened as he explained the role. Flexible hours, analytical work, training updates, remote planning tasks she could do from home part of the week. He had already thought about the obstacles. That impressed her more than the salary number he mentioned. When he finished, she asked one question. "Why adjust the position for someone you just met?" Jonathan answered without hesitation. "Because rare judgment is harder to find than experience. Experience can be taught. Character cannot." Emily was quiet for a moment, not flattered, evaluating truth. "I cannot promise anything," she said. "I have responsibilities." "I know," he replied. "And the fact that you said that first is exactly why I called you rare." She looked out the subway window as the train emerged briefly above ground, sunlight flashing across the glass. "I can meet for 30 minutes, she said finally. "Information only." Jonathan did not push further. Information is enough. When the call ended, Emily did not feel pressure. She felt something she had not allowed herself in a long time. Possibility. And as she stepped off the train into the busy morning crowd, one quiet realization followed her. Sometimes the future did not arrive to pull you away from your responsibilities. Sometimes it arrived to meet you where you already stood. The meeting was set for 11:30 in a quiet corner of a glass office building overlooking the Charles River, a place where everything looked intentional, from the polished stone floors to the silent efficiency of people walking with purpose. Emily arrived 10 minutes early, not because she wanted to impress anyone, because she respected preparation. She wore the same simple navy blouse she used for interviews years ago, pressed carefully the night before. No attempt to look important, just ready. Jonathan Reeves was already there when she arrived, not behind a large desk, but seated at a small round table with two identical chairs. Equal ground. Let it not go unnoticed. He stood when she approached, not as a performance, as respect. "Thank you for coming," he said. Emily nodded. 30 minutes, she reminded him gently. Jonathan smiled slightly. "Then I will not waste 1 second. There are no presentations. No dramatic speeches. Just conversation." He asked how she evaluated risk. She explained how she watched behavior before she trusted words. He asked how she stayed calm under pressure. She answered that panic solved nothing and preparation solved most things. Every answer confirmed what he already suspected. This was not someone who guessed. This was someone who observed. Halfway through the meeting, he said something unexpected. "This is not just a job offer." Emily looked at him carefully. "Then what is it?" Jonathan answered honestly. "It is an investment, not in your past, in your judgment." Emily considered that. "And what happens if my responsibilities at home conflict with your expectations?" Jonathan did not hesitate. "Then we build expectations that respect reality." She studied his face, looking for exaggeration. She found none, just certainty. "Why?" she asked again. Jonathan leaned back slightly. "Because 10 years ago, someone gave me an opportunity when my life was complicated. They told me something I did not understand then." Emily waited. Jonathan continued. "They said capability means nothing if you do not also protect the people who depend on you. I did not understand that until much later." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. Finally, Emily said something simple. "I cannot become someone different." Jonathan nodded. "I'm not asking you to." She took a slow breath. Then she made her decision. Not dramatic, not emotional, just clear. I could try part-time, structured hours, trial period. Jonathan extended his hand. That is all I hope for. She shook his hand. Firm, professional, equal. As she left the building 30 minutes later, nothing about her appearance had changed. Same calm walk, same steady pace. But something inside had shifted. Not ambition, alignment. That evening, back at the restaurant, one of the younger servers asked her quietly, "How did you stay so calm the other day?" Emily thought for a moment before answering. Because calm is a decision you practice before you ever need it. The server nodded, not fully understanding yet. That was all right. Understanding came with time. Later that night, as Emily locked her apartment door and checked on her sleeping mother, she allowed herself one small moment of quiet satisfaction.